The Abandoned Farmhouse, a horror story inspired by real events. In the late 1950s, in a small town in Kansas, surrounded by vast fields, people began whispering about an abandoned farmhouse. The farmhouse had been vacant for years. The yard was overgrown with weeds, the wooden panels of the house were rotting, and the windows looked into a dark void. But what made the farmhouse unsettling was not its silence, but the unease that came with it. The farmhouse's past. In 1952, the Dyer family, who lived on the farm, vanished without a trace. John and Mary Dyer had moved to the town a few years earlier with their 2 children. Rumor had it that John had started seeing strange things on the farm. Doors opening by themselves at night, whispers from behind the walls, and shadows moving through the fields. One morning, the family's belongings were found inside the house, untouched. But the Dyers were gone, and they were never heard from again. The farmhouse sat empty for years, yet locals claimed to hear strange sounds at night, children's laughter, screams, and the grinding noise of metal. No one dared to go near it. The journalist, a decade later, in 1963, a young journalist named Sarah Cooper heard about the farmhouse and decided to investigate. While sifting through old newspapers in the town's library, Sarah discovered something chilling about the Dyer family. A few weeks before they disappeared, John Dyer had spoken to a priest about a demon living on the farm. The priest had visited the farmhouse but never revealed what he saw. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah decided to write an article about the mysterious farm. Against the townspeople's warnings, she drove to the farmhouse one evening, the first night at the farmhouse. When Sarah stepped into the farmhouse, an oppressive silence greeted her. The inside of the house was barren, but the walls were etched with carvings. As Sarah examined them, her skin prickled with unease. On the walls were scratched phrases like, "I couldn't protect them," and "This was only the beginning." As she explored the house, something odd happened. It seemed larger than it should have been. Hallways stretched unnaturally, and doors opened to black voids instead of rooms. Late into the night, Sarah heard a sound that wasn't her own footsteps. A child's laughter echoed through the house, but it was muffled, warped, and deeply unsettling. She followed the sound with her flashlight and saw movement behind one of the walls. Approaching carefully, she found a narrow crack in the wall. Behind it was an old cellar. The air inside was damp and smelled of decay. On the cellar floor were dry bloodstains and a symbol etched into the dirt. The dark truth. Sarah returned to the library, desperate for answers. She dug deeper into the priest's records and found an old journal. The entries revealed that John Dyer had made a deal with a dark entity to protect his children. But the deal came with a price far worse than he imagined. The entity claimed not just his family, but anyone who set foot on the farm. The journal described the entity manifesting through eerie sounds, particularly the distorted laughter of children. Despite her fear, Sarah knew she had to return to the farm to uncover the full story. The last night at the farmhouse. The next evening, Sarah returned to the farmhouse with a camera. As she stepped inside, a foul stench filled the air, a mix of decay and burning. Her camera recorded everything, but the house began to shift around her. Doors slammed shut, walls closed in, and hallways twisted into unfamiliar shapes. Eventually, she found herself back in the cellar. This time, a rusted table stood in the center, and on it lay an old notebook. As Sarah flipped through the pages, words began appearing on their own. "You can't escape. We are here." She turned around to find the cellar's entrance had disappeared. Her Her camera was still recording when a shadowy figure appeared and rushed toward her. The camera fell to the ground, capturing only the sound of Sarah's scream before cutting out. The aftermath. The next morning, Sarah's car was found abandoned outside the farmhouse, but there was no sign of her. When the police retrieved her camera, the footage showed only dark hallways, faint laughter, and the sudden emergence of a shadowy figure. The townspeople stopped talking about the farmhouse entirely after that. Over time, nature reclaimed the land, but some say strange sounds can still be heard at night. Sarah Cooper was never found.